Getting sharp photos doesn't need to be difficult or as complicated as most photographers do put it. You just need the right knowledge and the best way to implement that knowledge. Hi, I'm Hugo. I travel the world and photograph full time, and I help outdoor photographers go from button clickers into storytelling photographers. In this video, I'll go through the 6 reasons why your photos might not be as sharp as you'd like them to be, and don't miss any of these, because even if you miss one of these, it might cause your photos to be then unsharp. But before we dive in, if you haven't checked out Focus Notes, my newsletter where I share exclusive insights from my photography journey to over 8,000 photographers, then make sure to join us from the link in the description. Alright, so when I started out photography, I didn't get sharp photos at first, but thankfully it didn't take too long for me to figure out how to get sharp photos. Thanks to me learning from those ahead of me. So you are in the right place. I'll keep this video as simple as possible for you and go through the things that actually make a difference. Most photographers do tell you things about getting sharp photos that doesn't actually make a difference. So I'm not gonna be like one of those guys. I'm gonna tell you what actually makes the difference. If you're anything like me, you just want to learn the most efficient way as possible. Alright, so let's dive into it. The first reason why your photos might not be as sharp as you'd like them to be is that you're using the wrong shutter speed. And typically this means you're using too slow of a shutter speed. When you're shooting, you need to take into account 1, camera shake, and 2, the moving subject's speed, so to say. So let's go through the camera shake first. When you're shooting handheld, you must understand that we humans, even though we would like this to not be true, but we just can't be totally still. So there's always going to be some shake. And the shake is going to differ if you're in an indoor environment or if you're outdoors, and if it's like extremely windy outdoors. That's going to depend on then how still can you stay. But the main rule that you should follow is as follows. If you're shooting first of all full frame, then say you're shooting at 100 millimeters, then your shutter speed should be 1/100th of a second. And this typically will get you a sharp photo. But this indeed just and only accounts for your camera shake. It doesn't take into account what's actually happening, what you're photographing. Then if you're using an APS-C, then you must take into account the crop factor, because a 100mm lens on an APS-C camera, for example, might be 150mm or 160mm. And then 1/100th is not gonna be enough. So then you should use like 1/150th of a second, at least. So that's the camera shake part. Then you must be very conscious of what you're photographing. So if you're photographing a still scene where there's nothing really happening, then you probably can use a pretty slow shutter speed. But if you're photographing some action or there's an animal, then you can't be using that slow of a shutter speed. So you need to be conscious of what's happening and then choose the shutter speed accordingly. So take into account the camera shake and then what you are photographing. If you're using too slow shutter speed, it's not going to be a sharp photo. The second reason is that you're using way too high ISO. And here's a caveat to this as well. Most photographers aren't understanding the tools we have available for ISO, and that's why they are using the wrong ISO. If you want to learn more about ISO, I have made another video on it. You can watch it from one of the corners then after this video. But when it comes to sharpness, if you're taking a similar photo with ISO 100 versus ISO 20,000, then there is gonna be a difference in the sharpness levels. That's just how it is. But with magical DeNoise tool that we have available still in today's age in Lightroom, that means that we can kind of get rid of the noise, which is amazing. But it still probably won't be as sharp as if you shot it at ISO 100. So understand, the higher the ISO you're using, the softer the image will most likely be. But don't be afraid of using the ISO, seriously. Because if you are limiting the ISO, it might be that then you have to use the wrong aperture or the wrong shutter speed, and then your photo is gonna be unsharp. So set the aperture first, then set the shutter speed, and then raise the ISO as much as you need to get it sharp. That said, it's one thing to understand what's ISO and shutter speed and aperture, and then it's another thing actually being very fast on field. If you are someone who feels you are missing shots because you aren't fast enough on field, then I might be able to help you inside my StoryLens mentorship, where I do provide you my 1 second setup formula so that you won't miss the photos anymore on field. So if you want to apply to work with me, then DM me on Instagram with ready, or then if you don't have Instagram, then just hit the other link in the description to apply. Alright, reason number 3 is that you're using the wrong focus mode. And I like to keep focus mode stuff very simple. I don't think about it pretty much ever, but that's because it's now second nature to me. But you should know the difference between two focus modes. One, autofocus single shot, and then autofocus continuous. How these are marked in most cameras is that the single shot is AF-S and the continuous is AF-C. And then for some reason the Canon people thought that like, hey, let's be different and use different naming for the continuous. So the Canon has AI Servo AF. I have no idea why did they go for that. And then of course there might be some other brands like Fuji. I think they have like a C marking. But anyway, those difference you should know. So when you're using the single shot, then when you focus, it's gonna lock the focus. It's not gonna keep changing the focus up. And this can be very good when you are wanting to lock the focus. You don't want that it refocuses. For example, if you're on field and you're waiting for a moment to happen, then it can be very useful to have the single shot. If you know like where you want, say, an animal to appear or a person to walk to, like a position, then you can already have the focus ready and the focus is not gonna change. I like using this for that reason. Then the continuous is more helpful where you need to change the focus fast and like there's more action going on. This can be great for moving animals, if you're shooting action, and that kind of stuff. Street photography too. But understand that there's a difference. So single shot, it locks the focus and it's not gonna change the focus, and then continuous keeps focusing all the time. So if you're using the wrong mode, then it might be that, yeah, like your camera wants to focus where you want the focus to be. Then number 4 is that you use the wrong aperture. And for aperture, I also have made a video on how to make sure you don't choose the wrong aperture, and I recommend watching it from one of the corners here after this video. But understand aperture affects sharpness a lot. First of all, is if you have a low f-stop number, then less of the photo will just be in focus. So there's going to be a small area that's going to be in focus compared to if you have a high f-stop number, then there's going to be a lot that is in focus. So understand aperture affects what's in focus. But it also does affect the sharpness levels overall. Because if you shoot at f22, for example, the photo is not going to be as sharp if you were shooting compared to at like f11. That's just how it is. Now, the sharpness of each lens depends on the lens, like what aperture is the lens the sharpest at. And yeah, most photographers take some example photos, and although you can do that, I wouldn't want to do that myself. I have never done that myself. I just go to internet and I Google this stuff. I'm gonna leave a website down below for DxOMark where I have just went to look at test results. So you don't need to go and probably take photos yourself and test it out, so you will save some time. Just look at the results if the website of course has your lens, so to say. Then reason 5 is that you're using camera strap on a tripod when it's windy. Now, I'm not someone who says that you always need to remove the camera strap when you use a tripod. I pretty much never remove it, never. But if it's extremely windy, then yes. Lately I was shooting, well, I did make a vlog of this as well to my channel if you want to check it out at some point. But it was so windy when I was photographing the northern lights, and it was like crazy. Like it might be like 15, 20, 25 meters per second. I don't know. It was wild. And I knew that now I probably should remove the camera strap, because otherwise it's gonna shake the camera. So I did remove it, and then my photos were sharp. So be conscious of the camera strap, that remove it when it is extremely windy or when you're using the tripod. Then another helpful thing can be is that you use a delayed shutter. So what this means is that you select like a timer inside your camera and you press the shutter and then you wait 2 seconds, 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and the camera is then gonna take the shot. So there's gonna be a little delay. I don't typically use this because I kind of like to be in control of the moment, and I don't think you must use this, but if it is windy or you need to have a very low shutter speed, then this is helpful. So for example, at night, it can be very useful to have like a 2 to 5 second delay if you're shooting like very wide angle. Then if you are shooting like blue hour as well, it can be very helpful to have some sort of delay. If you're shooting midday, I think it's pointless to use this. But when the conditions are harsh, low light or just very windy, then consider using this. So I use the 2 to 5 second timer when using a wide angle when the conditions are tough. And then if I use a telephoto, then I use the 10-second one, because there's more camera shake happening. So yeah, I need to use the 10-second one. But yeah, you can use this to help you get sharper photos too. And now I feel it is the best time for me to tell you to stop worrying about sharpness. Getting sharp photos is very important, but if you have to choose between an extremely sharp photo that says nothing versus a photo that isn't absolutely sharp, but it does tell something, you should always select that one, not the sharp one. The unfortunate truth is that sharp photos alone won't make you a great photographer. In today's age, like pretty much anyone can get sharp photos. You know, like you just take a phone photo and it's probably sharp. But yeah, so that won't make you a great photographer. What makes a great photographer is their skills in visual storytelling. And I cover this in this video. So watch that next so you know how to become an incredible standout photographer. If you enjoyed this, make sure to also subscribe and leave a like. Cheers, see you there.